In July of 1976, the entire world was watching Montreal, hosting the biggest sporting event on the planet. The games of the 21st Olympiad were wildly ambitious ones that established Montreal as a modern, cosmopolitan city and changed the way the world saw Quebec and Canada. But that came at a cost. Massive spending and controversy hung like a dark cloud above the 76 games before they even started, and cast a shadow over Quebec for decades to come.
50 years later, how do Quebecers see that event? And how did it shape the society that we have here today? From sports to culture to politics even. To measure the legacy of the 1976 Olympic Games, we first need to start with what Quebec and Montreal were before this massive event reshaped our landscape.
It was a time of big visions for Montreal, big dreams.
Coming out of Quebec's quiet revolution, when the province shed a religious and antiquated identity for a more modern one, Quebecers, and particularly Montrealers, had an appetite to reintroduce themselves to the world.
Montreal is on the move, and one man is moving it.
Mayor Jean Drapeau of Montreal, who's here tonight.
There was a man behind all of this, which was Mayor Jean Drapeau. And of course, he had this tremendous vision for Montreal and for really putting Montreal on the map. With Expo 67, of course, there was an experience of international events, of building, and of also creating an entirely new space, and the infrastructure, the mobility infrastructure that would go with it.
Montreal between 1967 and 1976, I think, might have been peak Montreal. It was really the height of modernity, the height of technological progress, optimism about what these things could possibly bring.
Starting from the 60s, there's a global trend to build infrastructure, to think that hosting the Olympics will be a platform.
The 70 members of the International Olympic Committee have just finished balloting. For Montreal, 41 votes. Moscow, 28 votes.
Once Montreal was awarded the 1976 Games, it was time to get to work. And with only 6 years to get everything up and running, there was immense pressure to build all the necessary infrastructure and facilities. And with that pressure came lots of challenges.
In 72 and in 73, the things start going not on schedule, and especially with the grandiose, I would say, plans for the stadium, which is very, very ambitious compared to other stadiums that have been built.
Jean Drapeau's behind-the-scenes decision to let French architect Roger Talibert design an elaborate concrete stadium with a tower and retractable roof proved to be a massive challenge to build, and the first lesson learned.
A structure of this kind had never been built before in North America. The types of materials that they use, those precast concrete sort of rib-shaped elements that are the structure, needed entirely new facilities to be built.
I think today we would never allow such projects to happen. So today, new Olympic infrastructure will more often be more generic and less specific, and more transformable and less technically unique.
As pressure to get the venues and infrastructure done was building, labor strikes and pressure tactics created further delays, changing Quebec's labor landscape forever.
In the context of construction, this was definitely a watershed moment. And you have a project in which the worker has very strong leverage because it is a fixed deadline project that absolutely has to be finished on a certain date. So if they want the work to continue, well, in this particular context, the worker has a lot of power to potentially obtain what they want.
And behind closed doors, greed, corruption, collusion, and the influence of organized crime drove up costs wildly, publicly exposing those facets of Quebec's society when facts came to light in the years to follow.
It was certainly a strong learning moment. And I don't think that one would argue that there has been such a case of a mega project that has been so poorly managed afterwards.
If there was corruption and if there was vice and sin, and Montreal was well known for that, I think that putting Montreal on the international map with the Olympics encouraged people to rise to a higher standard.
The Olympic Park was an active construction site just days up until the opening ceremony, with the city and the province in political turmoil. But on July 17th, 1976, all of that was set aside, and people here and around the world had a chance to witness 2 weeks of delightful Olympic frenzy they'd never forget.
We hear a lot of people talking about like how it was amazing and they felt recognized and they felt, seen.
They really went to town with the merchandising. There was a hairdryer with the Montreal Olympics logo that you could buy. And publications galore, magazines, posters, t-shirts. It was pretty much everywhere.
Much of this has found its way into an exhibit at Montreal's McCord-Stewart Museum. Some of those design elements are still being used today, including in the logo of the city of Montreal.
All of these were designed by the same designer and have really given an identity, I think a visual identity, to Montreal. So that's certainly a positive aspect and a positive legacy.
And the competitions themselves left an unforgettable impression on Montreal's collective memory.
Here's her dismount. Beautiful!
Nadia Comaneci, of course, the Romanian wonderkind gymnast who had perfect score.
That was the biggest moment for internationally, even for Quebecers.
All the girls talking about Nadia Comaneci and how it changed their life and how they started practicing gym.
Comaneci's moment so iconic that in the years that followed, countless babies here were given the champion's name.
These women now would be almost 50 these days. They were called Nadia because she made such a big impression on people in Quebec.
When the fun was over, though, reality began to settle in. The Olympic Stadium itself still needed to be finished, and some might argue it still isn't. On top of that, the massive cost of hosting the Olympic Games was becoming clearer, a cost that would burden Quebec and Montreal for decades.
Le juge Albert Malouf estime que la ville de Montréal et le comité organisateur des Jeux olympiques sont les principaux responsables de l'augmentation des coûts des Jeux de 1976.
What is spectacular from Montreal, it's the proportion of overruns. They started at something like 125 millions and passed it like 14 times.
This Olympics was the largest cost overrun of any modern Olympics. So it ended up costing about $1 million per athlete.
Malouf conclut que l'ancien président du comité exécutif de Montréal était nettement en conflit d'intérêts alors qu'il accordait des contrats à certains de ses amis.
A lot of the optimism of the 60s was definitely gone by the end of the 70s, and certainly the big O, right, of the Olympics certainly played a large part into it.
How the games were handled was quickly harnessed in the political sphere. Harnessed by a party that supported labor unions, the working class, and francophone Quebecers who had a newfound pride in their identity.
We probably have to see this hangover after the 1976 Olympic in a larger context. By the end of the year, it's the election of the Parti québécois, which of course for a lot of Quebecers is a great moment of hope and of promise, but for other Quebecers it's a rather traumatic moment.
Traumatic because while there was a sense of cultural revolution at the time for many Quebecers, the sovereignty movement and 2 referendums shifted much of the province's economic power westward. This made it hard to tackle the cost of finishing and maintaining the Olympic Stadium, a flawed home to the Montreal Expos before they left in 2004, and more importantly, the debt from billions in infrastructure spending in the era prior and the Games itself, whose final price tag was nearly $1.6 billion.
it really required radical measures in order to pay back, right? And it took 30 years for Quebec society.
We're still, to an extent, paying for that right now.
Yes, one of the reasons regularly cited for Quebec's significant infrastructure spending today is underspending in the decades after the Olympics. And there are other knock-on effects.
Refusing to host some games of the World Cup was probably linked to that sort of post-Olympic hangover.
And that's also what, influenced our sort of trauma, because we're proud of the Olympics, but if you talk to any Quebecer, there's always this feeling that it was expensive and we should not have done it.
But 50 years later, the financial pain and political upheavals of that era are fading into history, and public opinion is slowly changing. For many, what they see now is what physically remains from the 1976 Olympic Games and what it's created since, much of it creating a sense of sporting and cultural pride.
Today, sports is everywhere in the city, in the parks, and the infrastructure are implemented quite easily. So it's not all a failure. On the contrary, it's much more like success.
The Olympics and the development of all of the facilities had a positive impact on the development and promotion of professional sports, but also sports at all levels.
It's an investment, and you don't necessarily get a dollar-for-dollar return on every investment. There is value in outside of money. There's cultural value, there's the prestige, there's the pride. Those things you can't put a dollar figure on.
And yes, while some consider it the world's best example of a white elephant, the Big O does also house the Olympic pool and sports center, the Biodome, and it's getting a new lease on life with yet another new roof. And it does remain an important tourist attraction as well as an important piece of the city's identity.
For me, the stadium is really important. It's an amazing piece of art, and it's a really rare piece in Canada and in North America, and we have to be proud of it.